And I chose the topic of steadfastness because it subsumes resilience and subsumes pausing. It includes a wide range of things like determination and grit, and when we break it down into little tiny parts, there's a lot of parts to it that are really important. And so, but when we practice steadfastness, then we really are calling upon a lot of resources in order to be able to do that. Now, steadfastness implies that there is an opposing force of some sort. Right? What would we be steadfast against? What do we need to, what is the opposing force that's trying to throw us off one way or another? So what that may be? That may be our, well, it could be anything. It could be how we feel about the politics of the day, what's happening in the world, what's happened to the earth. Could be what's happening in one's family. I've seen a lot of family issues come up recently, last few months, and clients and friends and family. And so what steadfastness implies is what we talk about all the time, is that when we have habitual patterns, and when we activate those habitual patterns, we're really not thinking at all. We're bypassing the neocortex and we're just reacting straight out of the reptilian brain. But steadfast implies an even stronger commitment to being present. And it takes effort. Sometimes we have to really decide to be steadfast in a particular situation. So when we talk about pausing, that's a really important part of it. But even the sort of next octave is steadfast, because it implies commitment also. And that I refuse to get involved in X, Y, Z, or I refuse to go back into that old habit, or it's a form of self-discipline, but at a very deep level. It's not just I'm going to eat oatmeal instead of sugary cereal. It's much more of a deeper commitment. And it's usually in the face of an urging to go into what's familiar and comfortable, into the habitual patterns. Well, they're just a jerk, so I don't have to deal with them at all. I'm going to just block them. That's not being steadfast. Steadfast is when somebody's really yanking your chain, you go, while they're doing it, you go, no, I'm not going there. And then you let them finish, you go, well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, let's go have lunch sometime. or whatever comes out of your authentic self in response. But it's the commitment to remain in your authentic self in the moment, as it is, in a situation where we're being pulled, or we have habitual patterns that want to take us in a different direction. Also, we talk about that in terms of a commitment to, Ukraine, pretty steadfast in its commitment to sovereignty. So against all odds, it says, no, we are a nation. And no matter what's going on, like I said, no, we're not, there's no such thing as surrender without sovereignty. We're not surrendering our sovereignty, period, ever. And that's really steadfast. When we talk about our own practice, and one of the things that we haven't really talked a lot about, maybe I'll do something like this next year too, is to discuss what a practice really is. Because one of the things that sort of drove me to do this series was because I taught 8-week MBSR courses and mindful self-compassion courses. And I thought, after that, what do? I mean, you go home and do it by yourself, or or you take the course again, or you start a meetup, or there's not a lot of really good options. So what we have is the need, I believe, the need for connection and for continuing in our practice with others, like this group, and there's other groups too that in a similar manner, and to actually take a look at our practice and ask ourselves, how can we deepen and broaden our practice, whatever that may be. And so when we do that, then we come to a really interesting point, which is, we can call it self-discipline. That's also one of the aspects of being steadfast. But we hold to our commitment to follow a particular path or a particular format or a particular direction. And that's where we really begin to get the things that lie at a deeper level of these practices. Because both mindful self-compassion and MBSR, both you can start, when somebody starts them, there's changes kind of right away, within a week or 2 or 3. And there's been studies done that I've mentioned before. At the end of an 8-week MBSR class, people's brains are different. And they remain that way, whether or not they continue meditating, which I've mentioned before. But then the next question is like, how do I continue? I can get those immediate responses, those immediate changes in my life, which are really nice. Greater sense of well-being, you sleep better. Just generally the baseline of anxiety comes down. But what's next? And that's where steadfastness comes in. A lot of times people, when they say, well, what's next? It's really about, how can I continue my practice in a manner that continues my practice? And I'm not just here at this level, but I can keep going deeper. One of the easiest answers is that since every major world religion has this particular mindfulness practice and practices on compassion, that whatever your flavor is, whether it's Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, they all have practices that can deepen our experience with meditation and with compassion. And I'm of the belief that and the way it's taught in all those traditions that I'm familiar with, is that when we're teaching, start with meditation, we teach meditation first. But as we go along the path of meditation, it doesn't really help much just to meditate, because that's an emphasis on oneself. I'm meditating because I want to feel better. I'm meditating because I want to be a better person, or that sort of thing. So what the traditions talk about, almost right away, as soon as somebody gets grounded in mindfulness, they talk about compassion. And compassion is, okay, you're feeling better? Well, let's get off our butts and go do something. Let's help other people feel better. Who around me is is languishing in the absence of compassion? What family member has got a real issue and doesn't really know how to deal with it, and they're totally consumed with with their own plight. Their focus is entirely on themselves, and the more they focus on themselves, the more painful the experience is. Well, we know from mindful self-compassion and MBSR that when we focus on ourselves and try to fix something's wrong with me kind of thing, and we just get more miserable. And so it's when we begin to get the benefits of mindfulness that opens the door for compassion. And we find that applying compassion to our lives creates a balance between self and other. And then when we're overgiving, we can realize that right away and express compassion, take care of ourselves, compassion for ourselves. And when we're too focused on ourselves, then we go help somebody else. And when people or compassionate toward us, we don't have to say, oh, no thanks, I'm okay. No, I'm fine. And they go, and you see the look in their eyes, they go, I know you're not fine, but that's okay. So the compassion component is really important. So both in meditation and in learning compassion, to be compassionate, and learning further studies on compassion, it's sort of typically the way we work. If we don't see a great benefit to it or a point in it, we just kind of stop and do something else. We're not quite as committed. So steadfastness says, look, I know this stuff works, and after we've gotten through the preliminary and the initial benefits, I really want what these other folks are talking about, but it's going to take some time. So both with meditation and with the compassion exercises and the teachings that go along with them in these traditions, it takes time. And what that means is there's going to be a lot of practice without noticing any change. And that's just the way it is. But if we have faith in the practice, faith in the tradition, and faith in the teachings, meaning, and by faith I don't mean certainly in the Christian sense. What I mean is that it's said that there's three types of faith. One is you actually see something occur in someone or oneself. So there's an experience of a particular event, so that we know, and so we can rest on that because we know that works, whatever that is. Second is we have somebody that we know telling us about their experience, and that something really worked for them. And that's the second kind of faith. And the third is just sort of well, I don't know, but history shows, and this and that, and maybe that's true. That's kind of far out. I don't know, but I'm willing to roll the dice on that one. And that's the third. It's the weakest form of faith, but it implies going in am I going in the right direction? Yes. I don't know quite what's there or how this is going to work, but that's the direction I'm going to go in. So we proceed, and in those times where we're meditating or self-compassion exercises or whatever, we're going, man, this isn't working. Nothing's changed in the last month. I mean, what's going on? Well, that's the time to just apply steadfastness. You just do it. Now, the real secret there, the reason why that's the case, is because what we're really doing is winnowing away our ego. So if I'm sitting here wanting results, it's like, who wants results? Me. My little I, the little me. And I want to be happier. I want to do this, and I want to do that. And ultimately, that's our greatest barrier. We're meditating and doing these compassion exercises to strengthen our ego? I hope not. And I think, but we all do to some degree. And that's why the practices are so important that we continue, because as you continue, that will get worn away over time. And a lot of times it seems like nothing's happening at all, and then we go into a situation and we start responding completely differently than we had in the past. So we realize the last month or so of our practice has been very fruitful. We just didn't see it until just now. It's like fruit trees. Some of them take 3 years to even bear fruit. And when they first come up in the spring, there's no fruit on them. It's just a bunch of leaves, right? So then it warms up, and then you get more into springtime, and then the fruits begin to come out. And then later in the summer, later in the spring, you have ripe, wonderful, ripe, delicious fruit. And that's kind of the way it works with these exercises. But unfortunately, a tree doesn't have the kind of option to say, nah, thanks, this isn't working, and just go back to sleep. But we do. They don't have the power of choice that we do. And our power of choice says, this is boring, I don't want to do this. Oh, okay. I mean, no flaming hand comes out of the sky and says, you shouldn't do that. Right? So that's why we need really good teachers, and there's some wonderful teachers around. And I say, no, just keep going. You're doing good. You don't see it, but I do. Just keep going. And that's where steadfastness comes in, because steadfastness says, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to keep doing it, and I'm just going to do it because that's what I need to do. Without expectation or reward or anything like that, we just do it. And so when, if we're on a travel schedule, we arrange things as best we can. If our friends or family says, that's stupid, why are you doing that? Well, I don't know, it just seems like a good idea, and leave it at that, and they go, oh, okay. Don't give them anything to argue about enlightenment, because I'm reaching enlightenment. They go, oh yeah, that's right, yeah, right, have a beer. And so steadfastness is really important, because it's the foundation of our practice. And it's important to have a group with which to practice. Because in groups, no one's perfect, but fortunately everybody kind of takes turns at being imperfect. So that sometimes, when somebody's feeling kind of down, or they're confused about their practice, somebody else will speak up and say something that we'll find inspiring, and we continue. So today, steadfastness is on the menu, and I thought we'd start with a mindfulness meditation, mindfulness meditation to set the stage, and then we'll do the mountain meditation. And one of the things to think about, and I'll mention this during the narration, is about what is a mountain, and what does the mountain have to say. Because initially, in the standard form in the MSc curriculum, or in NBSR curriculum, it's appreciating the steadfastness of the mountain. But there's a reason for that. In other words, a mountain performs a valuable function in nature, and that's something we can contemplate also, because if it wasn't steadfast, none of all that wonderful stuff would happen. Say, well, today I'm going to go to that valley over there. It's, it's a problem. So that's what's on the menu for today, and so I guess it's time to begin. So finding a comfortable position. And settling in, and we'll begin. And just allowing ourselves to settle down. Settling into our bodies. Settling into the present moment. And letting the thoughts of the past or the future flutter away. Letting the to-do lists float off. Our theoretical failures of the past, letting them go, and our apprehensions about the future, letting those go too as best we can. And we do that by holding fast to the present moment and settling in. And whenever something arises, like thoughts or feelings, emotions, simply letting them go. And if the mind is racing, that's okay, let it race. Because eventually it will get tired. And for the moment, just observing, just resting our awareness in the present moment. And each time something pulls our attention away from the present moment, recognizing that it has been pulled away and letting go of the thought or feeling and returning to right here or right now. Over and over again, sometimes it doesn't acquiesce without a complaint, this chatterbox. But each time just recognizing, releasing, and returning. We call that the 3 R's sometimes. And sometimes the space between stimulus and response seems like a harbor. A place of comfort, circumscribed and not subject to the great ups and downs of the wide ocean. And allowing ourselves to abide there for a bit. And bring our awareness as fully as we can to this space. Space between thoughts and feelings. Between stimulus and response. And even if our thoughts don't slow down, that's okay. And just let go. And we may find each time we do let go, our meditation deepens a little bit more. Allowing ourselves the repose in the present moment as best we can, even if it's for just a second or two at a time. if a problem arises wanting your attention, wanting to get resolved, it's easy. You can just let it go and it'll come back later. And whether we can only glimpse this space between stimulus and response, or if we're able to abide there, either one helps us see what eludes us most of the time. And perhaps getting a sense that with continued practice, we can spend more and more time in this space, in the pause. That maybe that's a better way of so-called solving one's problems, quote unquote, and more effective than thinking about them. Allowing us to stay put. And somehow when we're just being, sitting and being, kind of changes things. And allows us to be more of who we really are. Allowing the world to fall away, just for a few moments, fall away completely, if possible. Allowing us to rest evenly in this evenness, a place absent of turmoil. Smooth waters. Open space. And in this space, as best you can, bringing to mind a mountain. Whether it's a mountain that you've seen before, or seen in a photograph, or it comes straight out of your imagination. And allow it to arise and provide you the information about it. Peaks or not peaks, plateaus, snow, no snow, huge and seeing it in the early morning light. Clear skies and bright warm sun. And sensing the mountain absorbing all that wonderful light and heat and warmth and radiation from the sun. And there may be vegetation up to a certain point or over the entire mountain. Maybe rivers or waterfalls. And we can sense or maybe even see the birds and the other creatures that live there on the mountain and depend on it. And as the earth turns, the position of the sun changes. Some parts that were in the sun are now in the shade. And clouds may have come by, brushing the peaks, or enveloping the highest parts of the peaks. And the mountain remains still. And the sun begins to set and the moon begins to rise. And soon the mountain will be in the darkness, under the light of the moon and the stars. Perhaps we may notice some of the night creatures, the nocturnal creatures. And as there's water or waterfalls, it just keeps flowing. And the mountain remains silent and steadfast. But fully present. And perhaps it turns cold, and a storm comes with snow and ice, and the mountain is unmoved. So a great and violent storm, lightning and thunder, and precipitation. And the mountain is unmoved. And through the seasons, the sun rises again, and we enter springtime. And with just a few degrees of rise in temperature, the snows begin to melt and the rivers are engorged with water. And they travel into streams throughout the valley, bringing its nourishment down below to the land. And perhaps we notice blooms of flowers, tall grasses, trees filled with leaves. Then a good part of the mountain now is all green from the spring. And the mountain is unmoved. making all this possible, staying still. And as the summer moves on, and the fruit trees drop their fruit, and all the melted snow has already coursed through the rivers and the streams, autumn sets in, and everything changes color. Though the mountain is unmoved. Getting a sense of how massive the mountain is and how irrevocably still it is. Such power. And watching the leaves turn and the grasses die down. And the mountain is unmoved. And now the weather turns colder. Fall is turning into winter. And the mountain hosts and endures it all. So what does the mountain teach us? Many things, but one above all, that when we stay still, it brings the potential for all forms of life. And perhaps when we're sitting, we can get a sense of a sort of triangular formation of our body is much like a mountain. And when just sitting, we are much like that mountain. And allowing our bodies to absorb this beingness, the presence of this mountain, that we may meditate in a like manner and practice the stillness that invites it all. and allowing ourselves just to be. Just surrendering to the way, just the way things are. And we do that by allowing ourselves to be present and steadfast in this presence. Regardless of what's going on around us. And again, settling back into the present moment awareness with this newfound stillness and steadfastness. And allowing our bodies to absorb these feelings as presence, the steadiness, the unmovability. Allowing our bodies to absorb this. So that when the bell rings again, we can bring this with us as we go about our day. And come back to it at any time.